Security. I want this woman removed from the property right now. Victoria Bradford's command, sharp and cutting, sliced through the elegant Hamptons estate. Her diamond-studded Cartier watch caught the sunlight as she made a dismissive gesture. I absolutely refuse to allow our family's impeccable reputation to be tarnished by some desperate gatecrasher looking for a handout. Angela Washington held her ground, perfectly still. Ma'am, she stated calmly, I believe there may have been a simple misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Victoria moved in closer, lowering her voice to a vicious, venomous whisper. Listen to me closely. This estate is valued at $30 million. These guests are the descendants of established American dynasties. You clearly do not belong here. I apologize if I've caused any inconvenience, Angela replied with impeccable composure. Victoria's eyes narrowed with predatory focus. The sheer audacity, she spat, to trespass onto private property as if you held the deed yourself. She snapped her fingers imperiously at the approaching security detail. Escort her off the premises immediately, before she attempts to pocket something or makes a greater spectacle of herself. Angela's hands remained relaxed at her sides, her voice carrying a quiet, unwavering grace. Of course. As you wish. Victoria was utterly oblivious to the fact that she had just profoundly insulted the wrong woman. Angela did not head toward the main exit. Instead, she turned onto the winding garden path, navigating it with the assured familiarity of someone who had done so 1,000 times. Her steps instinctively avoided the exact loose flagstones that other, less familiar guests might stumble upon. The catering manager froze mid-sentence during a conversation with a server. Mrs. Bradford, that's... Victoria spun around instantly. Nothing, ma'am, the manager stammered, his face visibly paling. What is that supposed to mean? It means, Victoria, Ray said distinctly, using her first name, that some people operate on a level far above your social pay grade. The insult struck Victoria like a physical blow. She staggered slightly backward. How dare you address me in that manner? How dare you address her in that manner? Ray countered, nodding toward Angela. Pink Dress stepped forward again, bolder now. Who is she? Some low-level criminal you've dealt with before? Ray let out a short, bitter laugh. Lady, you have absolutely no idea. Then inform us. Ray looked at Angela for guidance. She granted him a minute nod. She is someone who carries more legitimate authority than every single person attending this wedding combined. Authority? Harrison scoffed dismissively. What possible authority could she possess? The kind you never question. Victoria's mounting confusion morphed into pure, concentrated rage. Stop speaking in these idiotic riddles. If she is so crucial, why is she crashing our wedding? Maybe she isn't crashing it. Of course she is crashing it. We never sent her an invitation. Did you invite everyone who rightfully belongs here? The final question hit the crowd with stunning impact, silencing them completely. Angela checked her timepiece once more. Detective Coleman, perhaps we should allow these good people to resume their celebration. Of course, ma'am. Whatever you deem appropriate. His unending deference was visibly driving Victoria to the brink of insanity. Ray, what has possessed you? Nothing at all. I simply know exactly who I'm dealing with. And who exactly are you dealing with? Ray swept his gaze over the circle of hostile, expensive faces, then to the nervous staff watching from the periphery, and finally to the massive mansion towering above them, a proud monument to inherited privilege. Someone who possesses the authority to change all your lives with a single phone call. That is utterly ridiculous. Is it? She remembers her father's devastating phone call that terrible morning in 2004. Baby girl, something's happened to the house, he had choked out. His voice had been utterly broken, confused. They say we don't own it anymore. They claim there were debts, serious legal problems. I don't understand, Angela. My daddy built that house with his own hands. Victoria instantly notices Angela's momentary hesitation and pounces like a predator sensing a fatal weakness. What's wrong, dear? Having second thoughts about your pathetic little scam? The crowd grows noticeably bolder, sensing definitive victory. She's stalling, Harrison laughs loudly. Probably trying to figure out a route to escape. Margaret steps closer, pointing. Look at her hands shaking. The guilt is visibly eating her alive. Angela thinks of her father's quiet funeral 3 years later. He died still haunted by the belief that he had somehow failed and lost the family estate. Died convinced he had failed his ancestors, failed his only daughter. Daddy never got to see his true home again, she whispers, a painful catch in her voice. Victoria's smile turned savage, predatory. What was that, darling? Are you feeling sorry for yourself? My father died thinking he had lost everything. Good, Victoria snarls. Maybe this will teach you not to covet other people's hard-won property. The sheer, gratuitous cruelty hits Angela like a sharp, physical blow. Her impeccable composure finally cracks. Victoria instantly sees the telltale tears forming and moves in for the emotional kill. Oh, now we get the sob story, Victoria mocks. Let me guess. The poor little girl whose drunk daddy filled her head with fanciful fairy tales about owning grand mansions. The crowd laughs loudly, approvingly. Pathetic, pink dress sneers. Absolutely pathetic. Angela closes her eyes tightly, struggling to fight back 2 decades worth of accumulated pain and raw, blistering rage. The Washington family crest will be restored to its rightful place above the entryway, and this estate will permanently host an annual scholarship fund dedicated to underprivileged students seeking higher education. The crowd watches Victoria's complete, humiliating transformation from aggressive predator to penitent supplicant. Mr. Peton, Angela addresses the lawyer. Your client will voluntarily report all documented tax irregularities to federal authorities immediately. Cooperation now may significantly reduce consequences later. Peton nods grimly, accepting the inevitable. Understood, Your Honor. Angela surveys the assembled guests one final time, her gaze steady and penetrating. Ladies and gentlemen, remember the profound lessons of this stay. True authority does not demand respect through intimidation or wealth. It earns respect, definitively, through service and demonstrated character. She closes her briefcase with quiet, final dignity. Some people possess the presence to command an entire room without uttering a single word. Others can scream hysterically and still command absolutely nothing. Judge Angela Washington walks deliberately toward her car, leaving behind a wedding that will forever be remembered for all the wrong reasons and for all the deeply right lessons. A final, probing question for reflection. When you possess real, undeniable power, do you ultimately use it to elevate others or to cruelly diminish them? Share your thoughts below and subscribe for more stories about justice delivered in unexpected circumstances. He quickly immersed himself in arranging champagne flutes, his eyes darting nervous glances toward Angela. Victoria started noticing the peculiar, synchronized behavior of the staff. Servers were clustering, whispering among themselves, their discreet pointing barely concealed. The head groundskeeper reflexively removed his cap as Angela passed, then hastily looked away the moment Victoria's glare fixed on him. Why is everyone behaving so strangely? Victoria muttered under her breath. Angela glided through the grounds with an unnerving, intimate familiarity. She skirted the nearly hidden irrigation sprinklers near the rose garden without glancing down, and took the obscure shortcut past the carriage house, a route known only to long-time residents. Her fingers momentarily brushed the trunk of an ancient oak tree where initials had been carved decades earlier. Victoria trailed behind, her irritation boiling into suspicion. Asterisk, that woman is examining our property like she's casing the joint for a future robbery. The nervous wedding planner approached. Mrs. Bradford, perhaps we should. Should what? Victoria's voice climbed higher. Let some random trespasser threaten a lawsuit against our family estate? Absolutely not. Angela, meanwhile, paused beside the magnificent reflecting pool. She gazed at the central fountain, the same one her grandfather had commissioned and installed in 1952. The brass nameplate, which had once proudly read Washington Estate, had been torn out 20 years ago, yet she perfectly recalled the faint outline of where it had rested. An elderly valet approached her with hesitation. Miss Angela, is that truly you? Victoria's head snapped around violently. Miss Angela? Thomas, do you know this person? Thomas's mouth opened and closed silently, like a fish out of water. Well, that is. Speak up, Victoria demanded. She used to visit here a very long time ago, he finally managed, his voice barely a breath. Ray's smile was grim and humorless. Mrs. Bradford, do you happen to know who holds the actual ownership of this property? Victoria's face instantly lost all color. What kind of outrageous question is that? A straightforward one. Who officially holds the deed to this entire estate? The Bradford family, obviously. Obviously, Ray nodded slowly. And you're absolutely certain of that fact? Of course I am sure. It's been our home for 20 years. Angela closed her leather briefcase with a quiet, definite click. The small sound resonated in the sudden silence like a clap of distant thunder. Detective Coleman pulled out his cell phone. Mrs. Bradford, allow me to help clarify the situation. There is nothing to clarify. Victoria snapped. This is our property. Then you certainly won't object if I perform a quick property search. His fingers moved rapidly across the touchscreen. Nassau County property records are, after all, public information. Victoria's eyes flickered nervously. That is completely unnecessary. Just being thorough, Ray said, his methodical police training clearly evident. Let's see. 47, Meadowbrook Lane, Southampton. The crowd pressed forward eagerly, sensing the imminent drama. Here we go. Ray's face became grim. Interesting. What is interesting? Margaret demanded shrilly. Ray looked at Angela, who gave him a brief nod of permission. According to official county records, this property was originally acquired by a James Washington, purchased in 1924. That's ancient history. Victoria scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. The Bradford family has been the established owners of this estate for decades. Actually, no, Ray continued, scrolling further. James Washington's estate was passed down to his son, Robert Washington, in 1952 and subsequently passed to Robert's daughter. He paused, allowing the drama to build. Angela Washington. The resulting silence was absolute, stunningly deafening. That's impossible. Victoria leans down again, her voice dropping to a vicious, venomous whisper. Your father was probably just a drunk who quickly gambled away whatever meager money he possessed. Then he filled your head with pathetic lies about some imaginary inheritance. Stop. Angela whispers, her voice barely audible over the chatter. Stop what? Telling the absolute truth? Your entire family is likely nothing but a long line of utter losers and common criminals. Margaret eagerly joins the character assassination. Look at her, Victoria. This is the precise image of failure. This is exactly what happens when people don't recognize or accept their place in society. Angela forces herself to remember. She recalls her grandfather's detailed stories about building this estate piece by piece. Her great-grandfather's arduous immigration journey from Virginia. For generations of the Washington family's deep history, all inextricably rooted in this very soil. All stolen. All violently denied. All brutally mocked by these people, who have lived on her ancestors' land like destructive parasites. The federal folder feels immensely heavy in Angela's hands. With a single phone call, she possesses the power to utterly destroy every person attending this wedding. Federal fraud charges, tax evasion, criminal conspiracy, she could easily send Victoria to a maximum security federal prison for decades. But her father's voice echoes gently in the deep corners of her memory. Baby girl, always remember, power without mercy isn't power at all. It's merely revenge. Victoria mistakes Angela's sudden, quiet silence for total surrender, the moment she is finally accepting reality, ready to confess that this entire saga was a pathetic lie. Angela opens her eyes. The tears have completely vanished, replaced by an expression far more lethal, absolute judicial calm. Mrs. Bradford, Angela begins smoothly. You mentioned that money talks. Damn right it does. Victoria snaps. Angela turned to Thomas, offering a gentle, knowing smile. Hello, Thomas. You are still taking magnificent care of the gardens. His eyes instantly welled up with unshed tears. Miss, your father would be so incredibly proud. You look exactly like him. Victoria aggressively inserted herself between them. I have no idea what elaborate confidence scam you're attempting here, but this conversation is finished. She roughly grabbed Thomas's arm. Get back to your duties immediately. Angela observed the cruel exchange without a single word. Her perfect composure remained unshaken, even as Victoria degraded the elderly man and treated him like an owned possession. Now, more staff members were beginning to recognize her. Hushed, urgent conversations spread through the service corridors. The head butler looked moments away from collapse. Two housekeepers clung to each other, whispering what sounded suspiciously like prayers. What in God's name is wrong with all of you today? Victoria demanded, her voice strained. The wedding coordinator cleared her throat delicately. Mrs. Bradford, the ceremony begins in 1 hour. Perhaps we should finalize preparations. Not until this situation is resolved, Victoria snapped. She jabbed an accusatory finger at Angela. She is clearly making the entire staff nervous. They are barely capable of functioning. Angela resumed her unhurried, silent inspection of the property. She knew exactly which floorboards creaked in the east wing, the location of the hidden wall safe secreted behind the library portrait, and which master bedroom window provided the most stunning view of the sunrise over Long Island Sound. This depth of intimate knowledge terrified the staff far more profoundly than any of Victoria's harsh threats ever could. Victoria observed their palpable fear and completely misread the cause. See? They know something isn't right about her, she concluded triumphantly. Angela paused momentarily at the main house's rear entrance. Harrison spluttered. The Bradfords purchased this property legally. Ray shook his head. No sale recorded. The property was transferred through legal inheritance to Miss Washington in 2003. Victoria's face was completely colorless, stricken. There has to be some kind of clerical error in the records. County records rarely lie, Ray stated, his voice now imbued with unmistakable police authority. But let's confirm it 100%. He pulled his phone to his ear and dialed. Hey Maria. Ray Coleman. Can you pull the complete file on 47 Meadowbrook Lane? Yeah, I'll hold. While Ray waited on hold, Angela calmly opened her briefcase once more. She retrieved a thick manila folder filled with papers. What are those documents? Pink Dress asked, her nervousness now palpable. Property deeds, tax records, inheritance documentation, Angela answered, her voice soft, quiet as a librarian's whisper. Would you care to review them? Victoria lunged forward aggressively. Don't show them anything. This is clearly some kind of elaborate, fraudulent scam. Ray held up his hand, listening to his phone. Maria? Yes, I'm here. He listened intently. Uh-huh. No sales recorded. Property taxes paid by the Angela Washington Trust. Ray's eyes widened dramatically. For how long? 22 years. He slowly ended the call. Well, he announced, as Victoria's voice cracked in disbelief. It appears Miss Washington has been paying the property taxes for this estate since 2003. The crowd instantly erupted in chaotic, confused chatter. That is utterly impossible. Victoria shrieked. We've been living here. We've been maintaining the entire property. Angela spoke, addressing Victoria directly for the first time. Without permission. Without. What? You have been residing on my property without my explicit permission for 2 full decades. Victoria's entire world seemed to tilt violently sideways. Your property? Your property? And that you have connections I cannot possibly imagine, more wealth than I will ever see. Angela stands slowly, the black folder now held like a lethal weapon. You also mentioned judges who frequently golf at your country club. Victoria's smile widens with insolence. The very best money can buy, dear. Interesting. Angela's voice carries a chilling, new tone that instantly compels Ray Coleman to take another step back. Because I've been wondering about something myself. What's that, honey? Victoria challenges dismissively. Angela opens the federal folder, revealing the gleaming golden seal inside. I've been wondering what those judges would say if they knew you had been actively committing massive federal fraud for the past 20 years. Victoria's confident smile instantly falters. Federal fraud? What in God's name are you talking about? Angela's transformation is now absolute. The grieving daughter has vanished. The unyielding federal judge has emerged. I think it is high time we professionally discussed your real legal problems, Mrs. Bradford. The federal seal gleams ominously in the bright afternoon sunlight. Ray Coleman recognizes the insignia instantly. His trained police instincts kick in as he reads the official designation embossed in clear gold lettering. "Oh my God," he gasps, his voice carrying across the suddenly, terrifyingly quiet lawn. "Ma'am, I had no idea you were on the bench." Victoria's remaining confidence instantly dissolves. "On the bench? What bench are you talking about?" Ray removes his hat again, this time with overt reverence and dread. "Mrs. Bradford, you need to stop speaking right now." "Why should I stop talking?" "Because you are currently insulting a United States federal judge." The words strike the gathered crowd like a bolt of lightning. Several guests gasp audibly in shock. Harrison's champagne flute slips from his nerveless fingers, shattering violently on the flagstones. The heavy brass doorknob still clearly bore her family's monogram, despite someone having made an inadequate attempt to file the engraving away. She slowly traced the faded, defiant letters with one finger. Thomas watched from the far side of the courtyard, his face a silent mask of sorrow and undeniable guilt. The storm was unmistakably gathering, and Angela Washington stood calmly at its very center. "This has gone far enough." Victoria stormed across the terrace, her high heels echoing like sharp cracks on the marble. "Security, I want her off this property this instant." Two uniformed guards approached Angela, moving with noticeable reluctance. "Ma'am, we need you to accompany us." "Of course," Angela replied, rising from the garden bench with fluid grace. Victoria's voice was intentionally loud, carrying across the immaculate lawn. "I simply will not tolerate wedding crashers attempting to disrupt our family celebration." The sheer audacity of some people. Nearby guests turned in unison, their refined conversations abruptly silenced. "Is that woman creating trouble?" inquired Constance Whitmore, subtly adjusting her heavy emerald necklace. Victoria pounced on the opportunity. "She simply wandered onto our private estate uninvited, actually claiming she belongs here." Her laugh was brittle, like shattering glass. "As if we would ever associate with her type." The final phrase lingered in the atmosphere, heavy and noxious. Angela continued walking toward the gate, escorted by the guards. Her spine remained ramrod straight, her formidable dignity perfectly intact. "Good riddance," muttered Harrison Blackwell, ensuring his disapproval was heard by the surrounding circle. "These sorts have absolutely zero respect for boundaries." His wife offered an approving nod. "The entitlement is astonishing," she added, walking onto private property as if she owned the place. More guests eagerly joined the growing chorus of social condemnation. Angela carefully extracted 3 key documents from the folder. Original deed signed by my grandfather in 1924. Inheritance papers from my father's estate. Current property tax records. She arrayed them on the empty table like a winning hand of playing cards. Ray examined the documents with professional thoroughness. "These appear fully legitimate. Official seals, proper signatures, county stamps. They are forgeries." Victoria's voice scaled into raw hysteria. "Elaborate forgeries designed specifically to steal her home." "Ma'am," Ray said, his patience visibly wearing thin. "Do you possess any official documentation whatsoever proving your family's ownership of this property?" Victoria's mouth opened and closed mutely, like a stranded fish. "Of course, we do. It's locked in the safe somewhere." "Then perhaps you should retrieve it," Angela suggested calmly, checking her watch again. "Detective Coleman, don't you agree that these wedding guests deserve to know the full truth about the location where they are celebrating?" The crowd shifted awkwardly. They had signed up for a society spectacle, not a high-stakes real estate dispute. Margaret hissed urgently to Victoria. "Victoria, just produce your deed. End this ridiculous performance." "It's not a performance," Victoria hissed back fiercely. "This woman is trying to steal our entire home." Ray's phone vibrated with a text message. He read it, then looked at Angela with something bordering on awe. "Ma'am, I have just received additional, highly sensitive information about you. With your permission, should I share it now?" Angela considered the request carefully. "Not yet, detective. Let's maintain focus on the central property issue." "Of course, madam." His continued, unwavering deference was now driving the assembled guests to distraction. Harrison stepped forward aggressively. What additional information? Who is this woman? Victoria stares, mesmerized, at the folder in Angela's hands. That's impossible. Judge Angela Washington, United States District Court for the Eastern District of New York, Ray states, his voice now imbued with undeniable, grim cop authority. Appointed by the President, confirmed by the Senate. A lifetime appointment. The crowd instinctively backs away from Victoria. Even the most insulated, wealthy socialites instantly understand the crushing, undeniable weight of federal power. Margaret frantically grabs Victoria's arm. Victoria, we need to leave this property immediately. But Victoria is paralyzed, unable to process the words. Judge? She's a federal judge. Not just any judge, Ray continues grimly. Federal judges hold lifetime appointments. They are essentially untouchable figures of authority. Pink dress looks physically ready to collapse. We've been yelling vicious insults at a federal judge? You've been yelling at someone who has the power to send you to federal prison, Ray corrects severely. The wedding photographer emerges from behind a hedge, his camera in hand. I got everything on film, he stammers nervously. The entire confrontation. Victoria spins toward him, pure panic in her eyes. Delete those photographs immediately. Actually, the photographer stammers further, I think I should preserve them, as evidence. Thomas approaches Angela with profound respect. Your Honor, your father would be incredibly proud today. He always told us you would grow up to be someone exceptionally important. Thank you, Thomas. Angela's voice carries quiet, inherent judicial dignity. You have taken truly excellent care of the property in our absence. More staff members begin emerging quietly from the house. The head butler, 2 housekeepers, and the catering manager, all approaching Angela with obvious, immediate deference. Your Honor, the butler speaks carefully. Their voices became bolder, laced with cruelty. She was probably looking for handouts or planning to rob the gift table. They should have called the police right away. Angela reached the garden gate and paused. She turned slowly back toward the crowd, her gaze methodically memorizing faces, taking careful mental notes of who spoke, who remained silent, and who consciously looked away in shame. Victoria immediately spotted the calculated observation. What are you doing? Why are you staring down my guests? I am simply appreciating the gathering, Angela replied, her voice remaining as calm and cool as spun silk. Appreciating? Victoria's face flushed an angry crimson. You mean intimidating? Trying to make our respected guests uncomfortable with your mere presence? The wedding photographer lowered his professional camera nervously. He had captured the entire dramatic confrontation, sensing instinctively that these images might hold unexpected significance later. Delete those photos. Victoria barked. I will not have this embarrassment recorded. Yes, ma'am, he said, quickly scrolling through the display, but meticulously avoiding the actual delete button. Angela registered this subtle exchange with professional interest, her lawyer's training cataloging every minute detail. Thomas, the groundskeeper, peered out from behind a tall hedge, anxiously twisting his cap in his weathered hands. Other staff members watched from the mansion windows, their faces etched with guilt and apprehension. Why do you all keep staring? Victoria screamed. Get back to work, now. The servers scattered instantly, but continued to steal furtive glances at Angela. Their profound discomfort was impossible to miss. Victoria's friend Margaret approached, whispering conspiratorially. Darling, who is that woman? The staff looks absolutely terrified of her. Someone with more authority than anyone here cares to realize, Ray repeated firmly. Victoria felt her control completely disintegrating. Stop being so cryptic. Either arrest her for trespassing or leave. I cannot arrest someone when they are standing on their own property. It is not her property. Victoria's scream echoed across the meticulously manicured lawn, causing guests at even the most distant tables to crane their necks. Angela retrieved one more document, a 1924 property survey. Note the boundaries, she instructed. The massive oak tree with the carved initials marks the northeast corner. She pointed toward the oak she had touched earlier. The reflecting pool was installed in 1952, commemorating my grandfather's military service. The brass nameplate was removed approximately 20 years ago, but the original mounting holes are still visible. Every single detail she mentioned checked out visually. The crowd was silent, following her descriptions like an involuntary guided tour. The carriage house foundation was poured by my great-grandfather in 1920. If you inspect the concrete in the basement, you will find his initials carved there, JW 1920. Victoria looked dangerously close to vomiting. You researched our property to make your fabricated story believable. I researched my property, Angela corrected coolly, to reclaim what is mine. The word reclaim struck the gathering like a physical, thunderous hammer blow. Thomas the groundskeeper approached slowly, holding his cap reverently in his trembling, weathered hands. Miss Angela, your father would be so immensely proud of the woman you have become. Thomas, no. Victoria whirled around frantically. Don't you dare speak to this woman. Mrs. Bradford, with all due respect, this young lady's family is the one who built this magnificent estate, Thomas declared. Her grandfather hired my own father back in 1945. I have personally worked on these grounds for 40 years. We have always known this was your family's rightful estate. We've been hoping for years that you would finally return. Victoria stares in widening horror as her own staff members publicly abandon her. You all knew? You've known this entire time. Ma'am, we tried to tell you, the catering manager explains gently, but you simply never listened to us. Detective Coleman checks his phone. Your Honor, I've just received an immediate message from my captain. He instructs me to offer any and all assistance you may require with this matter. Thank you, Detective. That may indeed prove necessary. The power dynamic has completely, devastatingly reversed. Victoria suddenly finds herself isolated, surrounded only by people who now instantly defer to Angela Washington's supreme authority. A sharply dressed older man approaches the gathering from the parking area. Excuse me, I'm looking for Richard Peton's client. I understand there's some sort of property dispute underway. Victoria waves frantically, desperate for rescue. Richard, over here. Thank God you're. The man stops dead in his tracks the instant he sees Angela. His expensive leather briefcase slips from his hand and hits the ground. Judge Washington, he croaks, his voice cracking with palpable terror. What in the world are you doing here? Angela smiles coolly, acknowledging the panic. Hello, Mr. Peton. I believe you were scheduled to represent Mrs. Bradford in this matter. The lawyer darts terrified glances between Victoria and Angela, resembling a cornered, trapped animal. There seems to be some confusion. Indeed, there is, Angela agrees, her judicial authority now entirely filling the space. 20 years' worth of highly criminal confusion. Victoria watches, numb, as the devastating realization hits. Her highly paid, expert lawyer is visibly terrified of her opponent. Richard, what is wrong with you? Peton wipes a visible film of sweat from his forehead. Just some delusional individual who believes she belongs among decent society, Victoria said, her voice dripping with pure contempt. The sheer nerve of walking onto our estate without a formal invitation. How did she bypass the gate? Margaret wondered. She probably scaled the fence, Victoria scoffed. These people have zero respect for private property rights. Angela arrived at the estate's massive main entrance. The imposing iron gates still bore the unmistakable Washington family crest, the same motif that had once graced every structure on the property. She ran her fingers across the intricate metal scrollwork, commissioned by her great-grandfather back in 1924. The security guard accompanying her noticed the gesture and his face instantly went chalk white. Ma'am, we need to leave now. Angela ignored him, examining the crude brass plate that had been hastily welded over the original family name. The covering had been sloppy, executed quickly roughly 2 decades prior. Behind her, the wedding guests resumed their satisfied, self-congratulatory chatter about successfully driving off the intruder and protecting their exclusive social circle. Victoria addressed the assembled crowd like a triumphant military general. Ladies and gentlemen, please forgive this slight disruption. Some people simply lack the understanding of their appropriate place in society. A ripple of approving applause spread through the elite gathering. Angela finally stepped through the gates, but instead of departing, She walked directly across the street to a waiting car. She opened the trunk and retrieved a slim, expensive leather briefcase. The security guard instinctively took a step backward. "Ma'am, what is in the case?" Angela offered a small, mysterious smile. "Documentation." She turned and walked back toward the iron gates, her steps now powerfully purposeful. The true confrontation was about to commence. The depth of this revelation momentarily stunned the entire crowd into absolute silence. "Her family owned this estate when mine was still working the dirt in Ireland," Thomas continued quietly. "The Washingtons were good people, fair people. They treated all of us like true family." Victoria's face contorted into a mask of pure, vicious rage. "Thomas, you're fired. Pack your belongings and get off our property now." "Actually," Angela's voice sliced cleanly through the tension, "Thomas works for me. He has been on my payroll for 20 years. I have been covering his salary, along with all estate maintenance costs, through the estate management company." Another financial bombshell exploded into the elite gathering. Ray nodded confirmation to the shocked onlookers. "Property taxes, groundskeeper salaries, all general maintenance costs, everything has been consistently paid by the Angela Washington Trust." "This is utterly insane," Victoria screams, her voice cracking with fury. "We live here. This is our family home." "You've been my tenants," Angela states calmly, her voice cutting through the noise. "Tenants without a lease, without permission, and certainly without paying rent. Has it never occurred to you how anyone could occupy property they don't legally own for 20 years? Please, stay with me. The depth of this revelation is about to increase." Angela carefully extracts the final document from her leather folder. 20 years ago, she explains, "My father received a letter asserting that this estate had been sold to settle outstanding debts. That letter was signed by Bradford Estate Management." She lifts a crisp copy for all to see. The letter was entirely fraudulent. There were no outstanding debts. No legitimate sale ever took place. This property remained, legally and indisputably, in Washington family ownership. Victoria's knees instantly buckle beneath her. She clutches Margaret's arm, desperate for stability. "Victoria, we need to discuss this immediately and privately." "Discuss what privately?" she demands. "Your legal situation," he murmurs desperately, which just became catastrophically complicated. The wedding guests watch in stunned, fascinated silence as Victoria's carefully constructed world crumbles visibly around her. Yet, Angela is not finished unveiling the full, devastating scope of her power. Richard Petton pulls Victoria aside, whispering with extreme urgency. "We need to vacate this property immediately." "Leave? Why would we abandon our own property?" Petton's face has gone ashen gray. "Victoria, that woman is not just some federal judge. She is Judge Angela Washington, Eastern District of New York." "So what?" "She presides over major federal crimes, Victoria. Organized crime, public corruption, massive financial fraud cases." His voice drops to a terrified, barely audible whisper. "She sentenced 3 sitting congressmen to lengthy prison terms last year." Victoria's entire world visibly tilts sideways. That can't be right. It gets much worse." Petton frantically checks his phone for confirmation. According to her court records, she has presided over dozens of complicated property fraud cases. Her documented conviction rate is 97%. All color drains permanently from Victoria's face. Angela approaches them slowly, her judicial presence now completely undeniable. "Mr. Petton, I believe your client still has questions regarding property ownership?" "Your Honor, I am profoundly certain this entire affair is merely an unfortunate misunderstanding." "Is it?" Angela asks coolly, opening her federal folder completely. "Because I possess extensive, authenticated documentation of mail fraud, wire fraud, serious tax evasion, and conspiracy to commit theft of federal property." Petton's briefcase trembles uncontrollably in his hand. "Federal property?" Angela re-entered the estate grounds, the leather briefcase held loosely in her hand. "What now?" Victoria's voice shot up an octave. "Security, she's back." "Ma'am, we escorted her out precisely as you requested." "Then escort her out again." Victoria's face was green with unrestrained fury. And this time, guarantee she stays gone. But Angela did not head toward the main crowd. Instead, she walked calmly to a vacant table positioned at the very edge of the reception area and simply sat down. The unmitigated audacity, Victoria declared, turning sharply to her guests. She is literally attempting to crash our wedding reception. Margaret gasped melodramatically. Should we call the police immediately? I am seriously considering it, Victoria muttered, pulling out her phone. This crosses the line into deliberate harassment. Angela opened her briefcase and began reviewing the thick stack of papers inside. Her concentration was absolute, intensely professional. What is she reading? Harrison squinted across the vast lawn. It looks like legal papers. A sudden, cold dread shot through Victoria's veins. Asterisk legal papers? What could she possibly be? Asterisk Victoria cut off her own thought. It's probably fake, she announced loudly. She's trying to intimidate us with props. A young server approached Angela's table with pronounced hesitation. Angela quietly requested a simple glass of water. Victoria marched over, intercepting the server aggressively. Absolutely not. Do not serve this woman anything. But ma'am, she is sitting at an assigned reception table, the server protested weakly. I don't care where she is sitting. She is not a guest. She is a trespasser, Victoria shouted, ensuring her voice carried across the entire lawn. Nobody serves her. Nobody speaks to her. Is that crystal clear? The server nodded meekly and retreated quickly. Guests began to coalesce in tight, agitated clusters, their conversations growing sharper and more vicious. The fraud was highly sophisticated, Angela continues, her voice unwavering. It involved expertly forged documents, elaborate fake legal correspondence, and even outright bribes paid to officials to remove or alter public records. Ray Coleman's police instincts sharpened immediately. Ma'am, are you suggesting the Bradford family itself orchestrated this massive fraud? I'm stating that someone did, Angela corrects smoothly. The crowd collectively stares at Victoria, horrified comprehension slowly dawning. But Angela still has the ultimate demonstration of her true influence pending. Victoria Bradford, mastering her fear, straightens her spine, adopting the posture of a viper coiled to strike. This is blatant extortion, she booms. Her voice rings across the manicured lawn with terrifying, renewed authority, the authority born from decades of commanding servants and intimidating subordinates. Ladies and gentlemen, she addresses the assembled guests, sweeping the area with a condemning gaze. We are witnessing a highly sophisticated con game. This woman has clearly spent months, perhaps even years, extensively researching our family to construct this elaborately fraudulent narrative. Margaret nods vigorously, backing her friend. Victoria is absolutely right. She likely just found some ancient, irrelevant property records and fabricated this entire story around them. Harrison joins the immediate counterattack. The timing is incredibly suspicious. Showing up today at a major society wedding with forged documents, she hoped to catch us completely off guard. Angela remains perfectly seated, observing the Bradfords' coordinated, aggressive response with detached interest. Think about this logically, Victoria presses on, clearly warming to her theme. If she genuinely owned this property, why on earth would she wait until today to show up? Why not simply contact us privately through proper legal channels? This estate includes wetlands that are specifically protected under federal environmental law. Unauthorized, decades-long occupation constitutes a profound federal crime. Victoria finally grasps the total scope of her disaster. Federal crime. 20 long years of systemic federal crime. Angela's voice carries the authoritative, cold conviction of a courtroom. With evidence of intent to defraud, a systematic 20-year cover-up, and the documented bribery of public officials, the case is airtight. The wedding guests watch in horrified, morbid fascination as their elegant hostess instantly transforms into a federal criminal defendant. Your Honor, Peton stammers desperately. Perhaps we could immediately discuss a confidential settlement? Settlement. Angela's laugh is cold, crystalline judicial steel. Mr. Peton, your client just spent the last 60 minutes publicly humiliating me, threatening my liberty, and attempting to have me falsely arrested on my own family's property. Victoria grabs Peton's arm, shaking it fiercely. Do something. There is nothing I can do. Peton hisses. She is a federal judge standing on her own property, which we have been illegally occupying. A commotion near the ceremony area draws everyone's attention away from the legal drama. The groom approaches with his new bride, both still radiant in their wedding attire. What is all the shouting about? Michael Bradford asks his mother, a slight frown on his face. Victoria points a shaking, accusatory finger at Angela. That woman is trying to steal her home. Michael looks directly at Angela and instantly freezes. His face goes utterly white, matching his mother's pallor. Judge Washington, he barely whispers. Angela nods formally. Hello, Mr. Bradford. Congratulations on your marriage. The crowd senses another staggering revelation is about to build. Victoria stares between them, speechless. You know her too? Michael's hands shake visibly. The nerve of some people. She thinks she can scare us with that cheap briefcase. She's likely planning to sue someone. That's what their type always does. Angela continued reading, seemingly completely unaware of the mounting wall of hostility directed at her. Victoria began coordinating her campaign against Angela like a meticulous military operation. She gave terse, whispered instructions to the staff, pointed out Angela's location to late-arriving guests, and ensured everyone understood the necessity of isolating the problem. The photographer circled the reception but consciously avoided Angela's corner. When his telephoto lens accidentally captured her in the background, Victoria materialized instantly. I specifically instructed you to delete every photo of that woman. Yes, ma'am. I'm just getting general crowd shots. Then shoot them from the opposite direction. A group of young socialites approached Angela's table, snickering. Excuse me, said one, but this is strictly a private event. Angela looked up from her papers. Yes, I am aware. Then why are you still sitting here? Demanded the group's leader, a sharp blonde wearing a pink designer gown worth more than most people's annual salaries. This isn't a public area. You are absolutely correct, Angela replied, her voice perfectly steady. So leave. I will depart when it is appropriate. The blonde's friends dissolved into mocking laughter. When appropriate? Who do you think you are to make that decision? Angela simply returned to her legal documents without offering an answer. How utterly rude, the blonde in the pink dress scoffed to her companions. She clearly believes she's too superior to speak to us. Their voices became deliberately amplified. Some people truly have no inherent class. She's probably here scouting for a rich husband or planning to lift something from the gift table. Victoria watched the scene approvingly from afar. Perfect. Let the young ones take care of this. Because she wanted maximum embarrassment, Pink Dress interjects loudly. Maximum leverage for her inevitable lawsuit. A wave of murmurs washes through the crowd in agreement. The familiar, comfortable narrative of false accusations levied against respectable, successful families resonates deeply with their collective experience. Victoria dramatically pulls out her phone. I am calling our family attorney, Richard Peton of Peton Hayes and Associates. He will expose this ridiculous fraud in a matter of minutes. She dials the number with theatrical, visible precision. Richard? Victoria Bradford. We have a rather urgent situation. Yes. Here, at the wedding. Some woman is claiming she owns the estate. Fake documents, a huge spectacle. Yes, please, drop everything and come immediately. Victoria hangs up, radiating triumph. Our lawyer is already on his way. He's been handling complex property disputes for over 30 years. He will recognize blatant forgeries the moment he sees them. Ray Coleman shifts his weight uncomfortably, a prickle of unease running down his neck. Mrs. Bradford, perhaps you should wait just a moment. Wait for what? To be completely swindled. Victoria's confidence had now soared into open arrogance. Ray, I understand that she has successfully fooled you with this elaborate performance, but you're a police officer. Use your training. My training tells me that your training should compel you to arrest someone who is currently attempting egregious fraud. The crowd immediately rallied behind Victoria's explosive newfound strength. She's right. Harrison loudly declares. This entire performance reeks of a premeditated setup. Margaret points an accusatory finger directly at Angela. Look at her, sitting there so utterly calmly. She clearly planned every single detail of this. Victoria seized the powerful momentum. Exactly. Mom, we desperately need to talk about this privately. Talk about what? 3 years ago, I appeared before Judge Washington's court. Victoria's knees buckle again. What? Federal money laundering charges. I was facing 25 years in federal prison. Michael's voice cracks with sudden, raw emotion. Judge Washington showed profound mercy. She assigned me community service instead of sentencing me to hard prison time. The revelation detonates across the lawn like a nuclear bomb. She saved my life, Mom. I would have spent my best years rotting in a federal facility if not for her compassion and judicial wisdom. The irony is profoundly devastating. Victoria had spent the entire afternoon mercilessly attacking the one woman who had single-handedly saved her son's future. Your Honor, Michael approaches Angela with profound, immediate reverence. I had absolutely no idea you would be here today. I should have invited you personally to thank you properly for everything you did. Angela's smile now carries genuine judicial mercy. Mr. Bradford, I came today specifically to observe how power treats the powerless. The lesson, I assure you, has been extremely educational. Victoria realizes, with shattering clarity, that she has spent the last hour publicly humiliating a federal judge who holds her son's very life and freedom in her hands. The complete reversal of power is now absolute, irreversible. Michael Bradford steps determinately toward the wedding microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, I need to make a critically important announcement. The crowd immediately turns from the unfolding drama to listen, champagne glasses frozen halfway to their lips. Victoria lunges forward, her voice raw with panic. Michael, don't you dare. Judge Washington, Michael speaks clearly into the microphone, his voice ringing across the entire estate. Would you please join me? Angela walks calmly to the small platform. More guests drifted over, joining the escalating harassment campaign. They formed a tightening, loose circle around Angela's table, their discussions constructed specifically for maximum humiliation. I heard she actually climbed the perimeter fence. She should have been arrested on sight. This is precisely what occurs when you are overly lenient with common trespassers. Angela calmly glanced at her watch, then made several precise, methodical notes on a legal pad. She's taking notes, someone whispered urgently. The circle instantly shrank further, voices growing dangerously sharp. What are you writing about us? You can't record private conversations. This is harassment. Angela closed her notepad with a gentle finality. I am simply documenting my observations. Documenting. Victoria aggressively pushed her way through the hostile circle. Are you actively threatening us? Not at all, Angela replied smoothly. Just maintaining records. Records of what, exactly? Angela's smile was strangely enigmatic. Behavioral patterns, social dynamics, power structures. The crowd exchanged uneasy, confused glances. Victoria's immense anger finally hit its breaking point. You are attempting to intimidate my respected guests with your pathetic, amateur psychology nonsense. It will not work. Of course not, Angela said, standing up with effortless grace. That was never my intention. Then what is your intention? Angela began gathering her documents with deliberate precision. To observe how people treat those they perceive as powerless. Powerless? Victoria laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Honey, you clearly have no comprehension of what real power looks like. Don't I? The question hung in the charged air like a formal challenge. Victoria sensed the crowd's focus beginning to fracture. Security. Remove her immediately, or I swear I will call the police myself. Wait. A new, authoritative voice sliced through the tension. She meticulously researched our family, discovered our wedding date, painstakingly crafted fake documents, and even bribed that old fool Thomas to support her ludicrous story. Hey now, Thomas weakly protests from the side. Shut up, Thomas. Victoria snaps, rounding on him viciously. You're probably a key part of this scam. How much did she pay you? Angela speaks softly, her voice carrying a deep, quiet resonance. Mr. Thomas has been receiving his normal, scheduled salary, nothing more. Normal salary from whom? You don't have any money to pay salaries. Victoria's voice grew sharper, fueled by every succeeding word. Look at her, everyone. Does she remotely resemble someone who owns a $30 million estate? Where is her proper jewelry? Her designer clothing? Her expensive, foreign car? The crowd immediately scrutinizes Angela's modest navy dress and simple appearance with renewed, intense suspicion. Exactly. Margaret chimes in, reinforcing the point. True wealth doesn't need to announce itself this desperately. Victoria begins circling Angela's table, moving with the slow, deliberate grace of a predator. Where is your Rolls Royce? Your personal servants? Your highly trained security detail? Where are the customary trappings of real, established wealth? Angela's continued, unnerving silence only feeds the Bradfords' destructive confidence. I'll tell you where, Victoria continues, leaning in close. In her imagination. This is what pure delusion looks like, people. Mental illness combined with brazen criminal intent. Harrison nods sagely, lending his weight to the diagnosis. We see this frequently in our circles. People who cannot accept their station in life, so they construct these elaborate, self-aggrandizing fantasies. Pink Dress laughs mockingly, waving a hand dismissively. She probably lives in a cramped studio apartment and simply dreams of owning grand estates. Her quiet federal authority is now utterly unmistakable to every single person present. 3 years ago, Michael continues, looking out at the stunned guests, I stood before this woman's bench, facing federal money laundering charges that could have utterly destroyed my life forever. Gasps ripple through the wedding guests, several instinctively pull out their phones to record. I was guilty. The evidence was overwhelming. I deserved prison time. Michael's voice cracks with genuine emotion. Judge Washington could have sentenced me to the maximum, 25 years. Instead, she chose to see something in me worth saving. Victoria attempts to reach the microphone, frantically shaking her head. Michael, stop this right now. She gave me community service, mandated stringent financial counseling, and required victim restitution. Michael continues, ignoring his mother. He looks directly at Angela. But most importantly of all, she gave me hope that people, even people like me, can truly change. The crowd listens in rapt, stunned silence. Your Honor, I spent 200 hours serving meals at homeless shelters because of your sentence. I learned what real poverty looks like, what real struggle truly means. His voice grows steadily stronger, resolved. You didn't just save my future, Judge. You fundamentally saved my soul. Angela nods graciously, accepting the tribute, but says nothing. Michael turns to face the crowd, his gaze condemning. For the past hour, you have all watched my family treat Judge Washington with blatant contempt, vicious cruelty, and profound disrespect. Victoria's face burns with total, public humiliation. Michael, please. You have watched us attack a federal judge on her own ancestral property, the property we have been illegally occupying for 2 decades. The crowd shifts uncomfortably, recognizing their own complicity in the verbal assault. Detective Ray Coleman approached from the parking area, his wedding invitation peeking out of his suit pocket. His eyes instantly fixed on Angela, his face draining completely white with recognition. Jesus Christ, he muttered under his breath. Angela, what are you doing here? Victoria whirled around, astonished. You know this woman, Ray? Ray glanced rapidly between Angela and the aggressive, affluent crowd encircling her. His police training immediately analyzed the dynamic. Yes, he said slowly, deliberately. I know her. The entire crowd leaned in, hungry for information. Well, who is she? Ray's mouth opened, then snapped shut. He looked at Angela, who offered a fractional, silent shake of her head. He swallowed hard, adjusting his tie. She's someone you absolutely do not want to cross. But Victoria was determined to finish her moment of social victory. Someone I don't want to mess with? Victoria's laugh was high-pitched and shrill. Ray, darling, you're being outrageously dramatic. She is merely some woman who gate-crashed our private estate. Detective Ray Coleman stared at Angela with a mixture of reverence and profound respect. Ma'am, I had no earthly idea you would be in attendance today. Hello, Detective Coleman, Angela responded, her voice imbued with quiet warmth. Congratulations on your recent promotion. Thank you. He checked himself immediately. Thank you, ma'am. The crowd instantly registered his visible deference. Ray Coleman was 6 feet of hard muscle, a decorated officer of the law. He never showed deference to anyone. Ray, what in the world is wrong with you? Victoria demanded. Why are you behaving so erratically? Ray removed his hat with professional respect. Mrs. Bradford, perhaps we should address this matter in private. Address what? There is nothing to discuss. This woman is illegally trespassing on our family property. Your property? Ray's eyebrows lifted, just slightly. The personal attacks instantly grow more savage, more vicious. The sheer entitlement is staggering, Margaret sneers, horrified that Angela might believe she deserves what successful families like the Bradfords had painstakingly built. Victoria circles Angela like a shark closing in for the strike. You know what this is truly about? Jealousy. Pure, simple, green-eyed jealousy of people who have actually earned their success. Mrs. Bradford, Ray attempts to intervene urgently. You really should stop this now. Stop what? Defending our family's rightful property? Our reputation? Our absolute right to live without this kind of malicious harassment. Victoria's voice reaches a deafening crescendo. This woman has deliberately disrupted our daughter's wedding, traumatized our esteemed guests, and brazenly attempted to steal our home with forged documents. I demand that she be arrested immediately for fraud, criminal trespassing, and harassment. The crowd applauds the decisive action spontaneously. Richard Peton will have her processed and sitting in jail by this evening, Victoria triumphantly declares. We will sue her for defamation, severe emotional distress, and attempted theft. When we are finally finished, she will spend years in prison regretting the day she made this catastrophic mistake. Angela glances at her wristwatch once more. What exactly are you timing? Victoria demands, suspicion flaring. Your imminent escape before the police arrive? Not at all, Angela replies smoothly. Victoria leans down, her face inches from Angela's. Then listen carefully, whoever you think you are. You picked the absolute wrong family to confront. We possess connections you cannot possibly imagine. Lawyers who will utterly destroy you. Judges who golf at our country club. I see, Angela murmurs. You see nothing. You are about to learn precisely how real power operates in this country. Victoria straightens up triumphantly, preening before the crowd. Judge Washington has the full power to send our entire family to federal prison, Michael reminds them soberly. Tax evasion, mail fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy, she could completely destroy us. Peton whispers urgently to Victoria, we need to plea bargain immediately. Michael looks at Angela with absolute reverence. Your Honor, my family owes you everything, our freedom, our future, our very lives. He turns back to the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, we are celebrating my wedding today on land that rightfully belongs to the very woman my mother just spent the last hour attempting to humiliate. The silence across the lawn is absolute, deafening. Judge Washington, Michael's voice fills with genuine emotion. I do not know why you chose to be here today, but I am eternally grateful for this opportunity to publicly thank you. He removes the microphone from its stand and walks the few steps to Angela. Your Honor, would you like to address our guests? Angela takes the microphone, radiating complete judicial calm. Mr. Bradford, thank you sincerely for your courage and honesty. Her voice carries across the expansive estate with quiet, undeniable authority. Ladies and gentlemen, I did indeed come here today with the firm intention of fully reclaiming my family's property. Victoria collapses into a nearby chair, defeated. But watching your son speak with such profound courage and demonstrated growth, I am powerfully reminded why I chose mercy over vengeance 3 years ago. Angela pauses, allowing the heavy silence to absorb her words. Justice is not primarily about punishment. It is fundamentally about accountability, about full restitution, and about genuine change. She looks directly at Victoria, her gaze unwavering. Mrs. Bradford, you have illegally lived on my property for 20 years without permission. You have committed multiple, grievous federal crimes. You have systematically stolen from my family's sacred legacy. Of course, it's our property. The Bradford family has occupied this estate for 20 years. Ray glanced back at Angela. Her expression was flawlessly neutral. Ray. Victoria snapped her fingers sharply, as if commanding a pet. Stop gawking at her and execute your duty. Arrest her for trespassing. I cannot do that. What do you mean you cannot? You are a sworn police officer. Mrs. Bradford, please trust me on this point. You do not want me to arrest her. The surrounding crowd murmured nervously in confusion. Margaret leaned in, whispering urgently to Harrison. Why won't he simply arrest her? Victoria's voice climbed toward near hysteria. Ray Coleman, I've known you since you were in diapers. Your mother and I were classmates. Now, you arrest this woman or I am calling your commanding officer immediately. Ray's jaw tightened, his expression hardening. Go ahead and call him. See what he tells you. Money talks, honey, and we have more of it than you will ever see in 10 lifetimes. The crowd cheers Victoria's aggressive dominance. But Angela Washington checks her watch one final time, then smiles a tight, deliberate expression. Actually, Mrs. Bradford, she says. I think it's time you learned how real power works. She opens her briefcase and slowly removes a single, ominous black folder. Ray Coleman immediately spots the federal seal embossed clearly on the cover and instinctively takes 3 long steps backward. Jesus Christ, he whispers, horrified. Victoria, stop talking right now. But Victoria, completely intoxicated by her perceived victory, cannot stop. What now, Ray? Another one of her theatrical fake documents? Angela stands slowly, deliberately, the black folder held firmly in her hands. The true, terrifying demonstration of authority is now set to commence. Angela stares down at the folder. For one brief moment, the immense, crushing weight of 20 stolen years crashes down upon her shoulders. Victoria trembles violently. However, Angela continues, her voice softening slightly. Your son's remarkable transformation today gives me hope that even deeply entrenched people can learn from their catastrophic mistakes. The crowd leans forward eagerly, sensing the momentous decision. Angela's judicial mercy is about to fundamentally reshape all of their lives. Angela hands the microphone back to Michael. I am gifting this estate back to your family, she announces, but with specific, non-negotiable conditions. Victoria's relief is instantly palpable until Angela continues. Mrs. Bradford, you will immediately and publicly apologize to every single staff member you threatened, insulted, or disparaged today. You will establish a permanent, fully funded trust for grounds maintenance that explicitly honors the Washington family legacy. And most importantly, you will never, ever again treat any person as beneath your consideration. Victoria nods frantically, desperate to comply. Yes, Your Honor. Absolutely anything. Additionally, Mr. Thomas will receive formal, written recognition for his 40 years of faithful service to the property.